Welcome to the inaugural Danbury Talks, Turning All Learning into Knowledge for the Soul.
Buenas noches con todos. Vamos a comenzar con el programa. Vamos a dar la bienvenida a Danbury Habla, que es conversaciones con profesionales y panelistas.
My name is Dwayne Perkins.
Él es Dwayne Perkins.
I am founder and president of Will Passion, Inc., creator of the Race for Scholars Criterion.
Él es fundador de Will Passion.
Will Passion?
Y creador también.
Creator of Danbury Talks, educator, elected official.
Él ha creado Danbury Habla, también es educador.
I am also the proud father of 3 lovely daughters, one of whom is here tonight.
También es un padre orgulloso de 3 niñas, de la cual de una de ellas está acá.
On the serious side, several years ago, a car hit me while riding my bicycle.
Ahora, pasando a algo más serio, cuando él era más joven, un carro le golpeó.
3 medical doctors told me I was lucky to be alive.
3 doctores le dijeron que estaba suertudo de estar vivo.
Luck was their words.
Sorry, pardon me.
Yeah.
What did you say?
Luck was their words.
Suerte, eso fueron las palabras de los doctores.
After this experience and navigating the recovery of my physical and mental health,
Después de recuperarse y pasar por el recuperamiento físico y mental,
I knew I needed to take advantage of that opportunity.
él sabía que tenía que tomar ventaja de esta oportunidad.
As a young black man who grew up in Danbury,
Como un joven que creció aquí en Danbury,
I needed to do more for my community and share health and wellness knowledge.
él necesitaba hacer más para la comunidad y compartir su conocimiento con los demás.
This is when I created a 50-page business plan
Aquí es donde él creó una página, 50 páginas para ayudar,
which turned into Will Passion Incorporated.
que se transformó en Will Passion, la corporación de Will Passion.
The purpose for Will Passion
El propósito de Will Passion
will help introduce adolescents to live fuller and healthier lives
es que ayuda a convertir y ayudar a vidas saludables
through 3 signature programs:
por medio de 3 programas, por 3 firmas,
Health and Wellness,
los cuales son Health and Wellness, que sería salud mental,
Mentoring,
mentoría o tutoría,
Leaders and Scholars Fellowship.
líderes y becas.
As you all know, the pandemic had a major impact on our lives.
Como ustedes saben, la pandemia ha tocado y ha cambiado nuestras vidas.
80% of public schools saw a negative impact on students' learning.
Las escuelas públicas vieron un 80% de impacto en los estudiantes.
They also saw social, emotional, and behavioral development issues.
También miraron problemas con las emociones y las destrezas sociales.
Will Passion is the foundation,
Will Passion es la fundación.
and tonight's inaugural Danbury Talks kicks the process off.
Y hoy el programa Danbury Habla da el comienzo a este proyecto.
It will be a series of free community events
Que será una serie de eventos comunitarios
engaging in conversations that matter to us the most.
donde se basará en conversaciones y en temas que nos van a ayudar,
with the purpose of improving health and wellness for our families and communities.
con el propósito de ayudar y mejorar la salud de nosotros y de nuestros familiares.
Before we begin the program,
Antes de comenzar el programa,
I would like to bring Dean Esposito, the mayor of the city of Danbury,
vamos a dar la bienvenida a nuestro alcalde, Dean Esposito,
to the stage for a few remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, Mayor Dean Esposito.
Thank you so much, Dwayne, and thank you all for being here tonight. Let me just start off by thanking our guests here today on the panel that will help us answer some very serious questions about bullying and social media. But I'd also like to take the opportunity to thank Dwayne Perkins. Dwayne and I go way back. We're lifelong friends from when we were little babies, but he wasn't that tall then, but he was quite tall. But, you know, Dwayne's been focused on our community his whole life. He's been an educator, as we know, just recently retired. Congratulations, Dwayne. But also, he's been a city councilman. And he steps up at every meeting and throughout the year supporting the community that's out there that he represents. Not only that particular piece of Danbury, but just the entire city. And tonight just proves that Dwayne has the commitment for this community and bringing this group together to be able to talk on the different issues. I know if we look around and we say, oh, there's a lot of seats and there's a few people, but tonight is the beginning. It's the beginning of a great path that we're going to take together, Dwayne, as the city of Danbury, as this group works together to move things forward, to educate our residents on different issues. So I want to thank you so very much for putting this together. I want to thank each and every one of you for being here tonight. And be prepared, because we're going to be moving forward, fast forward. I'm sorry, I didn't know if I was supposed to be interpreted or not. I'm sorry. This poor young lady. How about a hand for our interpreter? I'm so sorry.
It's okay. Un resumen de lo que dijo nuestro alcalde es que este programa se complace y él algo que mira al pasado y se recuerda que Juan y él cuando eran pequeños crecieron y siempre tuvo esa pasión por ayudar a las personas y esa pasión por hacer algo por la comunidad. Y él también se refiere que esta es una iniciativa muy buena para la comunidad que va a seguir creciendo. Este es solo el comienzo.
Thank you. In closing, I would just want to thank you all again. You know, Wheel Passion is Dwayne's passion, and Dwayne's passion is going to move this city forward in unity. We're one of the most diverse cities.
Él se refiere también a la pasión que siente Duan, que motiva a otras ciudades que hagan también proyectos similares y que siga creciendo lo que está haciendo.
So tonight, Danbury talks, and from every night forward, as long as I'm concerned, we'll be working together to keep Danbury talking in a positive way. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for those kind remarks.
Él dice que gracias por el reconocimiento que le ha dado al alcalde.
Events like these require a lot of support.
Eventos como este requieren mucho apoyo.
We wouldn't be able to launch these types of efforts without our sponsors.
No hubiéramos podido lograrlo sin nuestros patrocinadores.
Join me in thanking our sponsors for this opportunity. One-on-one services, Blimo, Bethel Printing, Brookfield Plumbing and Heating, City of Danbury, Compass Patootie, Palace Theater, McGettrick and Associates, Rizzo Companies, and Ventura Law. Thanks again to our sponsors.
Gracias a nuestros patrocinadores.
I encourage you to support these businesses as well.
También les motivo a que apoyen a estos negocios de igual manera como nos han apoyado.
They are just as committed to our efforts and support of this community.
Ellos trabajan también para apoyar la comunidad.
You may already know that this month, October, is the observance of mental health suicide prevention.
Ustedes tal vez sepan, pero este mes de octubre trabajamos y es el mes para reconocer la prevención de la salud y de la salud mental también.
As I said earlier, it's important to recognize observance at a time where anxiety and depression has significantly increased since the pandemic.
Es muy importante estar observadores y mirar, ya que ahora con la pandemia los niveles de ansiedad y depresión han subido.
We're bringing you the inaugural Danbury Talks to have this important discussion in relationship to bullying and the influence of social media.
Traemos a ustedes, por medio de Danbury Habla, a la inauguración que esta conferencia se tratará de el acoso, la intimidación y la influencia de las redes sociales.
That will be accomplished with the help of our distinguished panelists.
Esto lo haremos con ayuda de nuestros distinguidos panelistas.
When you leave today, we want you to have a better awareness
Cuando se vayan ustedes, queremos que ustedes se vayan con conocimiento
of the mental health impact of bullying and cyberbullying.
del impacto que causa el acoso y la intimidación y la influencia de las redes sociales en nuestra salud mental.
We will also supply you with the tools to care for yourself and your loved ones.
También le daremos herramientas para que ustedes trabajen y cuiden de ustedes, tanto como de las personas que ustedes quieren.
So let's get started.
Vamos a empezar.
I'm honored to introduce our event moderator,
Vamos a introducir a nuestra modelista del evento,
Dr. Pamela Tolbert Bynum Rivers.
Dr. Pamela
Tolbert Bynum Rivers,
Tauber Palmer River,
Associate Professor of English at Naugatuck Valley Community College.
es la asociada, la profesora en Naugatuck Valley Community College, en la universidad.
And president and founder of a organization called Beyond Remediation.
Y presidenta y fundadora de una organización llamada Beyond in Communication.
It's a 501c3 to help limited college access.
Para ayudar el acceso limitado para la universidad.
At this time, I'd like to welcome to the stage
Le damos la bienvenida a la plataforma.
Dr. Pamela.
Gracias.
Thank you so much, Councilman Perkins, Dwayne Perkins.
Gracias a Dr. Dunn.
When Dwayne asked me to do this, I did not hesitate for a moment. As an educator and a parent, I am well aware of the criticality of this particular topic, and so I am hoping that we will take much away from this in terms of knowledge, in terms of education, in terms of that which we can share, hopefully, with those within our sphere of influence.
Cuando ella le preguntaron si quería participar de este evento, ella no dudó en hacerlo, no solo como educadora, sino como madre. Y también ella piensa que puede aprender mucho más de lo que ella va a decir.
So we know that these discussions are important, but we also know that they can be difficult. They can be challenging. And so we have an esteemed group here that we know are able to address these challenging issues, and hopefully at the end, they'll be able to take some of your questions. You'll be able to voice your concerns as well. So we also ask, please, if you feel that you are in crisis or that you need someone to speak with, we ask that you call or text 988 at any time, 988. You'll find this information available as well on your ticket. We want to ensure that you know that these services are available to the community. Now, so let us begin.
Sí. Qué bien.
I am so sorry.
Por supuesto sabemos que este tema no lo podemos hacer sin profesionales y por supuesto aquí tenemos nuestros profesionales que nos van a ayudar con este tema. También es muy importante saber si ustedes están en crisis o alguien que ustedes conozcan están en crisis. No se olviden que tienen la ayuda a sus manos llamando o mensajeando el 988. El 988 como mensaje de texto o llamando.
Our panelists are Debbie Zegas Berman, who is a mother and survivor of a suicide loss.
Como panelistas invitados tenemos a Debbie Zegas, que es una madre que ha sido sobreviviente de una pérdida por suicidio.
Mr. Scott Driscoll, he is president of Internet Safety Concepts.
Y a Scott Driscoll, que es presidente de la seguridad de los conceptos de Internet.
Elizabeth Driscoll Jorgensen.
Elizabeth Driscoll Jorgensen.
Elizabeth is director of Insight Counseling.
Ella es la directora de consultante de Insight.
Yes. Okay, we will ask each of the panelists if you would please just introduce yourself by explaining what draws you here this evening, why you are here to share with the community. And we'll start with Elizabeth. We'll start with Debbie.
Vamos a dar la palabra a nuestros panelistas, los quienes nos van a dar a conocer quiénes son y un poquito más acerca de ellos.
Can you hear me? It is working. I was honored to be asked to be a panelist on this very big event for Danbury because, to address bullying, because my daughter Alexa took her life when she was 14 years old in 2008. And there was cruel, intentional bullying by 3 former friends, one of whom had been her very best friend, and that played a very significant role in her decision, but it wasn't the only factor. But I really want to share some of her experiences in an effort to spare another child and family from having to go through what our child and our family did. After she passed away, we learned a number of things that we had not known. Alexa had actually been voicing her intentions to take her life, both in person and online, the week prior to taking her life, and both peers and adults were privy to this information, but no action was taken to prevent it. There are 2 ways in which she shared her thoughts. One, actually there's more than 2, but anyway, one was blogging. Oh, I'm so sorry. Let me start over? No. Okay. Anyway, okay.
Lo que nos ha querido decir Debbie y lo que nos ha querido compartir es que ella como madre, al ser preguntada que participe de esta conferencia, se siente honrada. Primeramente porque así es madre de una pérdida y eso pasó en el 2008, perdió a su hija Alexa por suicidio. Ella no miró las señales que ella estaba dando, pero después de pasar todo esto, recapacitar, volver para atrás y mirar las señales que ella estaba dando antes de esta situación, ella miraba que había muchas señales y que nadie, ni adultos ni compañeros, se dieron cuenta. También las personas involucradas, que de ella estaba sufriendo acoso, eran 3 personas amigas, que se decían amigas, que estaban involucradas en la situación.
These are the ways in which she shared her thoughts. One was that she was blogging. She was blogging on some very bizarre website that was like a deep, dark website, and she actually had been weighing the odds of whether she should take her life or not, and she showed a scale, and then she had 60% that she was for it, 40% that she was against it.
Una de las señales fue que ella publicó una semana antes en un blog preguntando, como una encuesta, diciendo si debería quitarse la vida o no. Y a lo que las personas respondieron, el 60% que sí y el 40% que no.
So we found out about this because a friend of hers had seen it and told her mom. My husband and I found out also that there were 17 hits on that particular site, and looking at what she had posted. So the friend's mom, I guess the friend saw it, and then she did tell her mom, and she showed it to her mom. And her mom couldn't believe that that was Alexa.
Y una de las cosas que, como ella se informó de esto, fue por el medio de una amiga que avisó a la mamá, pero la mamá al mirar el teléfono, mirar lo que había publicado, no lo podía creer que esa era Alexa, hija de David, la que estaba publicando eso.
She always saw Alexa as a very smiley, outgoing, happy girl.
Ella siempre veía a Alexa como una niña muy inteligente, muy sonriente y siempre contenta.
And she knew that this just did not sound at all like her.
No podría creer que esa era Alexa la que estaba poniendo la encuesta.
But it wasn't until after Alexa died that she called me on the phone to tell me what she saw.
Pero ella no actuó ese momento, sino fue hasta después que Alexa cometió el suicidio que ella avisó a Debbie por una llamada.
And the lesson to be learned is that if you do notice that somebody is acting atypically, they're not at all acting like themselves, that is a reason and a warning sign, and she should have let us know before.
Y una de las cosas que Debbie nos dice es que cuando alguien mira eso, la reacción que una persona puede tener es avisar, porque esa es una de las señales de aviso que Alexa estaba haciendo.
Debbie, we want to come back and
Okay.
we really want to focus in on Alexa's vulnerability. And so we want to go ahead and let...
definitely.
Yes, we want to ask Scott Driscoll, if you would just introduce yourself, Scott, and then we will come back to this topic of vulnerability.
Sure. My name is Scott Driscoll, and I started a company called Internet Safety Concepts. And what I do with my company is I travel all over talking to people about empowering the best choices for using today's technologies.
Y ahora vamos a parar un poquito con Debbie y vamos a continuar con Scott, que nos va a decir que él es parte de la seguridad cibernética y nos va a dar algunos consejos porque él viaja por el mundo y da estos consejos a otras personas para usar el Internet de una manera segura.
Why I'm so passionate about it and why I learned about it was I'm a retired police officer, and as part of my job as a police officer, I spent 10 years undercover online as a 13-year-old child. So I saw the dangers and the positives of the internet firsthand.
Y cosas que él sabe por experiencia es porque él ha sido policía, es un policía jubilado, que él, en su caso de policía, él estuvo de encubierto, pasándose por un niño de 13 años y vio todos los riesgos que hay en el Internet.
And Elizabeth Driscoll Jorgensen, Director of Insight Counseling, if you could introduce yourself.
Thank you. So my passion about this topic comes from the fact that I've been a therapist for 34 years working with teenagers predominantly. And I used to work at Danbury Hospital before that for 18 years. Well, no, they overlap, 18 years at Danbury and my practice for about 22 years. And so my colleagues and I were able to see a huge change in the way teenagers related to each other from the dawn of the internet.
Ella es Elizabeth, ella es consultante de Insight. Ella lo que nos dice que ella tiene 33 años de experiencia tratando con adolescentes en terapia.
And I just want to say something in general that I just want to empower parents that are here that you love your child and you do everything that you can to keep them safe when they're younger. And so internet safety should just be a part of what you do to keep your child safe.
Ella les quiere empoderar a los papás y a decirles que como papás ustedes lo quieren mantener seguro a sus niños y es algo que es importante saber.
I want to start, Debbie, if you would, piggybacking upon what Liz just articulated regarding parents being aware of their children on the internet. We know that certainly you are aware. I'm wondering if you could share with us what made Alexa so vulnerable. What do you think was the source of that vulnerability?
I'm going to have to go into a little bit of her background. We adopted Alexa from a Russian orphanage when she was 3.5 years old. And she was actually with her birth mom for 18 months. And her mom was very young. She was a teenager. I think she was about 19 or 18. And she really did want to keep Alexa. But, you know, she was a typical teenager, and I guess she lived in an apartment, and, you know, she'd have parties and whatever. And neighbors would tell on her, and I guess the third time that they told on her, the authorities came without warning and just took her away from her mom. So you would ordinarily think that that's a good thing that she was with her mom for 18 months, but if you think about it, she's just ripped away from her and never to see her again. So that just left, you know, a big hole in her. There were also 3 placements that she had prior to us going to the orphanage where we did adopt her from. And her way of coping was basically to attach to anybody that she came in contact with, so that every place she went, she would just automatically be very affectionate and warm and loving to all of her caretakers. Oh.
Vamos a aportar algo con lo de Debbie. Lo que le hizo la pregunta es que nos cuente un poquito más de Alexa, cómo era Alexa y la historia de Alexa. Alexa fue adoptada por Debbie cuando tenía 3 años y medio de un orfanato de Rusia. La mamá de Alexa, la mamá de ella era una adolescente de 17, 18, no más de 20 años, que como una típica adolescente le gustaba ir de fiestas, le gustaba divertirse, y lo que llamó la atención de sus vecinos y siempre la reportaban, hasta que un día la policía la tuvo que llevar a Alexa, separarla de mamá. Y también menciona que Alexa estuvo con la mamá 18 meses, lo cual es bueno, pero a la vez, si ustedes lo miran, de la manera como Alexa fue separada de mamá, también eso hizo que Alexa fuera muy fácil de llevarse con toda la gente, y esa se llevaba muy fácilmente, no tenía problemas de separación, pero sí mucho de apego, se apegaba mucho a la gente.
So due to that early trauma, Alexa couldn't take rejection.
Y debido al trauma, Alexa no le gustaba sentirse rechazada.
And when these girls basically dumped her in 8th grade, it just left, you know, a big gaping hole, and she wasn't able to heal from it.
Y cuando ella estaba en el grado 8, las niñas que decían ser sus amigas querían dejar de ser sus amigas, la sacaron del grupo social, eso la marcó.
She began cutting to relieve her sadness, and we took her to a insightful therapist.
Ella se empezó a cortar, que al punto que ellas le tuvieron que llevar a un psicólogo.
And the therapist diagnosed her with clinical depression and attachment disorder.
Y los terapéuticos le diagnosticaron con desorden de apego. Attachment disorder, eh?
Yes, yes.
To say something else, eh?
Yes, so with attachment disorder, you usually can't warm up to, like, your new family.
Yes.
But in her case, I had said before, she could warm up to everybody, and we didn't realize that really is a form of attachment disorder.
Y ella dice que este apego también muestra una señal que es un desorden emocional.
So knowing that, she went on medication and she did receive therapy.
Y sabiendo esto, ella recibió terapia y también estaba tomando medicamento.
We will come back because we do want to hear more of this. I want to shift just for a minute here over to Scott. Scott, we hear so much about cyberbullying. We understand the term itself, but as parents, we may not have seen it or we may not have recognized it. So Debbie is speaking to us about the tragic impact for Alexa. Can you share with us how this happens? And again, what does cyberbullying look like?
Ella lo pregunta a Scott, que nosotros estamos muy familiarizados con el acoso cibernético, y tenemos como una imagen de qué es, pero ¿cómo pasó con Alexa? Le preguntamos a Scott, ¿qué cosas o qué signos vemos en el acoso cibernético?
Well, the challenge we have with cyberbullying is a lot of times we only see a screen, whether we're the sender or the receiver, and we don't always see the impact of our words.
Lo que muchas veces vemos es una pantalla, vemos lo que mandan o lo que reciben, pero no vemos lo que eso impacta en las personas.
When a lot of us get bullied in person, we can see the immediate effect. Someone will be upset, someone will be crying. The bully will get satisfaction on making someone feel less inferior. Where online, all we see is the screen.
Cuando el acoso es en persona, nosotros vemos el impacto de inmediato, ya sea en persona, cómo la persona reacciona, cómo el acosador muestra el deseo o la satisfacción de haberle causado dolor a la otra persona, mientras que en el abuso o el acoso cibernético solo vemos una pantalla.
And because we don't see the impact of our words, we can cut a lot deeper with our words because we don't see the initial impact. And that's why cyberbullying is such a serious topic.
Y muchas veces cuando nosotros vemos la pantalla y no sabemos el impacto que causan otras personas, vamos más allá, más fuerte con la intimidación. Y eso causa que el acoso cibernético sea más fuerte.
Cyberbullying comes in a lot of different forms. A lot of us think it's just social media, but it can be a text message. It can be excluded from text messages, as what a lot of kids will call being ghosted, where they're really connected with some people, and all of a sudden there's no response back. It could be through what we call memes, funny little pictures with funny comments. Although some people might see the humor, it could tear somebody down if their self-esteem's not there, they're just having a bad day.
Y el acoso cibernético va más allá de las redes sociales. Se puede ver también en un mensaje de texto con memes, con cosas que pueden parecer divertidas, pero puede lastimar a la otra persona.
And the last thing I'll say about this is, one thing about cyberbullying that I think as adults we underestimate is, if we were bullied as a kid, we might be able to compartmentalize that and think about it in the past, where cyberbullying follows us long term. It doesn't just go away because we log off for that day. So one of the things we have to realize is how to talk to our kids about preventing it from happening or reacting to it in the appropriate way.
Y el ciberbullying o el acoso cibernético causa de varias maneras y hay veces puede ser un patrón que viene de atrás. Si nosotros hemos sufrido del acoso cibernético, eso se puede repetir y puede verlo. No significa si es que simplemente sale de las redes sociales, no está ahí y no sabe el impacto que causa.
Scott, you've touched upon this, but I'm wondering if you could expound for just one moment. What are some of the warning signs that my child is being cyberbullied? How should our children reach out for help?
Ahora la pregunta es a Scott que ¿cuáles son las señales del ciberbullying o el acoso cibernético y qué podemos hacer para prevenirlo?
There are several warning signs, and each child is going to be different. Each stage of their life is going to be different on what the warning signs might be. But a couple of the real tells are, first one is use of technology changes. If our child is using technology all the time and then it stops, or every time your phone rings, your child gets a little jumpy, that might be a really good starter for a conversation on what's going on.
So, las señales varían dependiendo la persona, dependiendo cómo lo estén sintiendo el acoso. Hay veces puede ser que si su niño está muy al pendiente de las redes sociales o muy al pendiente del teléfono y de repente las deja de usar, o si es que timbra su teléfono o ya sea de alguna persona cercana, él simplemente salte y esté muy ansioso por eso.
So it can come in a lot of different facets, but one of the things is the change in technology, but I think we also have to realize that if there's a bully, if someone's being bullied, there's a bully there too. So we have to be aware if our children's behavior really changes. It could be one side of the coin or the other. They could be the one being mistreated, or they might see the humor in tearing someone else down, and they might be the person who's doing the mistreating. So being in tune with how they do things online and communicating with them is so important.
Estando al pendiente de cómo se están comunicando con las otras personas es importante. Muchas veces puede ser de doble cara, puede ser, siempre que hay un acosador, hay también una persona que está siendo intimidada o acosada. Si un niño está presentando síntomas o señales así, entonces es importante ver cómo está actuando, cómo está reaccionando.
Thank you so much, Scott. Liz, please. Your work is entitled, This Is Your Brain on Social Media. Hey, given what we've learned thus far, can you please share with us the various ways that social media might impact teens emotionally or psychologically? If you could share, please.
Okay, so around the year 2013, we started to see a dramatic increase in anxiety and depression in tweens, so that's like 11 to like 13, and teenagers.
Como a Elizabeth le estamos preguntando que como ella tiene la organización que ayuda, que se caracteriza de el conocimiento, ella le pregunta que si ha visto estas señales, y ella lo que responde es que ella ha visto desde el 2013 que los niños más afectados con depresión o ansiedad que han aumentado ha sido desde los 12, 13, 14 años.
And what we know was happening at that time was the social media world was exploding, and also young people were being given smartphones. And each year that they call the penetration, each year that the market penetrated more kids and younger, the depression and anxiety went right up.
Ya algo que ella ha notado, que a medida del 2013 la tecnología subió, los niños estaban recibiendo más teléfonos, más tecnología en sus manos, entonces cada vez los niños utilizan la tecnología de una edad más temprana. Y a manera que eso ocurre, también la depresión y la ansiedad ha subido.
So before COVID, we were looking at depression rates and anxiety rates were the highest we had ever seen, and now they're higher after COVID. But I want to make sure that everyone knows it's not that all social media is bad. It's children who already had vulnerabilities were especially vulnerable when social media became so prevalent.
Antes de la pandemia dice que una de las tasas más altas, y ahora después de la pandemia pues se ha conservado como una de las cosas más altas. Y yes, I forgot the last part, I'm sorry.
I said it's not that all social media is bad for children, but children that were already vulnerable, like Alexa, were especially hurt by some of the social media.
Y ella lo que se refiere es que los niños han sido muy vulnerables, y los niños que han sido muy vulnerables antes de eso y que ahora sigue incrementando la ansiedad y depresión, se han vuelto mucho más vulnerables al punto de compararse con la vulnerabilidad, con ser muy vulnerables como Alexa lo fue.
And if I could just say, we know exactly what is causing it now. Young people, when they go on social media sites, don't know that everybody posts the most positive view of themselves on social media. We actually have a word for it in research. It's called the avatar self. It's a fake self that the teenagers and adults, like, I don't look like that picture anymore, but I'm still using it. That's the avatar self.
Y lo que dice que una de las causas principales que sabemos que esto está afectando a nuestros adolescentes, bueno, y hasta adultos, que tratamos de mejorar en las redes sociales, de aparentar algo que quizás no lo somos. Y ella pone un ejemplo que ella no se mira como en la foto, que ella sigue usando una de sus fotos antiguas. Y que así como este caso, muchos de nosotros lo seguimos haciendo.
And I'll finish up with this, whereas when a person's brain is fully developed, say by their mid-20s, they're able to think critically about the pictures shared and the photos of a whole group of friends together, all looking happy. And they're able to say, well, whatever, I don't care that I didn't get invited to that event or whatever. But a young teenager is constantly comparing themselves, their self-image, to what other people are presenting in a perfect way, in an avatar way. So their self-esteem goes down based on a false comparison. Does that make sense? That's exactly what's causing a lot of the self-esteem issues related to social media. That's exactly why it's happening.
Y ella lo que dice que a mediados de los 20 años las personas son más capaces de mirar y decir, bueno, puedo publicar esto, puedo publicar una foto con mis amigos, si no me invitan a un lado está bien, puedo ser más consciente de eso y puedo tomarlo de una mejor manera. Mientras que un adolescente siempre se está comparando, trata de publicar lo mejor y siempre está como dependiendo su self-esteem, que sería como su persona, dependiendo de cómo se va a sentir. Se va a sentir bien, se va a sentir a medida y comparándose dependiendo de las fotos.
We are learning, most certainly. And I think that for many of us, adults even, we can relate to what Liz is calling the avatar syndrome. Yeah. We can certainly relate to that. So we know that with teenagers whose frontal lobes may not be fully developed, we can understand the consequences here. And so we want to take this very, very seriously. This has been extremely insightful, and we know that knowledge is power. We know that. So let's translate some of this learning into knowledge that feeds the soul. So we're going to continue on, and I want to step back and let Debbie talk a bit more. Of course, we're all so very sorry, devastated about the loss of Alexa. And Debbie, I would like to ask you, with all of the knowledge that we've gathered to date, with all of that knowledge, is there anything that you may have done differently? Or is there anything that we should consider as parents in terms of doing differently in the lives of our teenagers to keep them safe?
Absolutely. And my husband and I were actually talking about this last night. So some of the things that we have learned is we didn't have the computer in an open space. And Alexa was just an extremely trustworthy kid, so we really didn't worry about it. But she had been going on sites. She also had been so terribly bullied. Some of the things that Scott just brought up, and Liz, she'd go online and these girls, I know you said that a lot of times it's just words, but they put pictures up of all these different activities they did that she wasn't a part of, and then they would also, at the meanest part, these two girls, the best friend and then this other girl, would go online and they would start pretending to be one another. And Alexa had absolutely no idea who she was talking to. And then they would kind of try to trap her. So, you know, they'd say horrible things to her if she said the wrong thing, you know, to the wrong person.
Ya, lo que le preguntamos a Debbie, volviendo para Debbie, la pregunta fue que todos estamos aprendiendo y conociendo un poco más, y aunque nos resulta devastante lo que pasó con Alexa, queríamos preguntarle qué hubiera cambiado si fuera al pasado, qué cosas haría diferente o qué cosas ella recomienda a los padres que hagan por sus niños. Y a lo que Debbie responde es, primeramente, tener la computadora en un lugar abierto donde los padres pudieran saber lo que ella estaba viendo. Este caso no fue así. Ella sí tenía iniciativa, veía varios sitios de internet. Alexa en privado no tenía eso que público para que el papá o la mamá estuvieran al pendiente de lo que está mirando. Okay, let me think.
And then just two other things that I'll bring up. One is that she was an incredibly good student. And a lot of times one of the risk factors is that grades will go down and they're not studying the way they were, but that was not true with her. And she was also incredibly good with adults.
También ella dice que ella era increíblemente bien relacionándose con los adultos. Las notas de ella eran muy buenas, pero había algo que, como ella decía, mencionaba de pronto, que las amigas, la mejor amiga y la otra amiga, se iban a lugares donde ellas publicaban, donde no le habían invitado a Alexa, y seguramente le hacía sentir mal a Alexa. De igual manera, también mandaban cosas en internet, se hacían pasar la una por la otra, intercambiaban roles las amigas para hablar con ella, pero de una manera no tan buena.
And her teachers would never ever have suspected that she could have any kind of social problems. So my husband and I were saying, you know, looking back, we probably needed to put, you know, some more pressure on them, where she should be seen in, you know, places that were not academic, like the cafeteria, outside.
Ella dice que los profesores no tenían preocupaciones en lo social o emocional de ella, de Alexa, pero que Debbie y el esposo hablan a veces de eso, y dice que pudieron haber podido más presión para que Alexa tuviera más vida social, estar en la cafetería compartiendo con otros niños, o algo que le ayude con su desarrollo emocional.
And the last thing that I just wanted to mention was, I mean, this was a thing that was really hard on me. She was going to a therapist, she would go in a group, and she would go alone.
Algo que ella recuerda es que a veces Alexa iba en un grupo o a veces iba ella sola.
She was very nervous about going to high school because she didn't want to have the same treatment that she had in middle school.
Ella estaba muy ansiosa de ir a high school o al colegio porque por todo lo que sufrió en la escuela previa.
And so the therapist made a deal with her and just said, you'll go to orientation, you'll see how it goes. Your parents would never let you stay in a school where you were really, it was just going to be unsafe for you. And afterwards, we'll come back and we'll talk.
Ella todo eso le consultó al terapeuta, el terapeuta le sugirió que fuera a la orientación como primer paso y que los papás van a estar apoyándole. De igual manera que ella iba a regresar y a contarlo y hablarlo cómo fue ese primer día de orientación.
And this was really hard, and I have to admit. We left the therapy session, and we're in the car, and she turns to me and says, what do you think of suicide?
Y algo que le pega mucho a ella es que ella recuerda que cuando salieron de terapia, fueron al carro, ella se viró para ellos y les preguntó, ¿qué opinan del suicidio?
And as hard of a time as she was having, I never really thought that she was referring to herself.
Era un momento que ella estaba teniendo. Debbie nunca pensó que ella realmente estaba pensando en cometer este acto.
There was a girl who was really struggling in the group, and she had been hospitalized several times, and I thought she was asking me because she was nervous about that girl.
Debbie dice que ella pensó que ella se refería a una amiga que Alexa ayudaba y que estaba pasando por unos momentos incómodos y pensó que a eso se refería, por eso venía esa pregunta.
Let me pivot just a bit to Scott, because
I just wanted to mention, though, because I think it's
Oh, yes,
important.
go ahead.
After she said that, I really should have gone right back into the office and said something, and I didn't. And even when I got home,
Yeah.
Algo que Debbie dice, que ella debía en ese momento regresarse a terapia y decir algo, y de esa manera ayudarla.
My goodness. Scott, Debbie has mentioned conversation, having conversation with her child, with her daughter. We know that not every child is going to be forthright and ask these pointed questions. What do you think of suicide? Many times we just don't know. Now, you touched upon this before, but I'm wondering if you can take a deeper dive into how we have these conversations with our children to prevent cyberbullying. You know, we've listened to the conversation here Debbie is having, and we don't really know where to begin, you know, what to pick up on. So I'm wondering if you can talk to us about where do we even begin as parents?
Ahora una pregunta para Scott es que ahora que escuchamos la historia de Debbie con su niña Alexa, ¿qué cosas o en dónde o en qué punto podríamos nosotros haber reaccionado o hacer caso de estas señales? ¿Cuál sería su sugerencia?
I think the first thing for parents is we have to understand that this happens. And it's not always someone else's child. It could be our child. So we have to also accept that we need to come up with a game plan and accept that we need to do everything we can to prevent it from happening. It's not going to always happen to someone else. It could happen to anyone we know or someone that we love.
Muchas veces esto pasa de manera diferente, no siempre pasa de la misma manera y no siempre va a pasar a una persona de al lado, tal vez puede pasar a alguien de nosotros, a uno de nuestros niños. Entonces, la manera más fácil es generar un plan y ver cómo podemos plantearlo y ayudar.
And it's certainly not an easy conversation to talk about. It's a very difficult topic, especially when we bring in technology that we as adults, we might not understand completely. So having to talk before something happens is so important. If we think about this, every stage of our life we have a plan. A lot of us won't even go to the grocery store without a written list because we forget everything. We plan for our retirement, we plan for careers, and then we tell our children good luck with what they're doing.
Esto es muy importante, la tecnología, como hay veces queremos ayudar a nuestros niños y ni siquiera la entendemos, entonces usualmente todavía llevamos un papelito de listado para ir a hacer el mercado. De igual manera, muchas veces decimos a nuestros niños, así como la tecnología está avanzando, buena suerte con eso, que ellos la aprendan y la sigan haciendo, pero ¿cómo podemos ayudarlo si no la entendemos?
So if we take the approach that it's not a scary conversation, it's something to help prevent and keep our children safe, we have to also accept that we have to learn a little bit about it. What are you doing online? What are your technology? And we have to realize as parents that being online is an option. It's not mandatory. It's not required as parents that we give them all the latest and greatest technology. If we don't think they're ready for it, you can wait. But having a conversation ahead of time before we do it, saying, I'm your support system. Come talk to me if there's anything. Get some plan in place with people they can trust.
Tener una conversación de estas con sus niños puede resultar muy difícil, pero es muy importante que ellos sepan que ustedes están ahí para ellos, que ellos pueden venir a ustedes y pedir ayuda o conversar de alguna cosa que les esté molestando o algo que estén pasando con la tecnología y seguir tener confianza en el papá, crear esa conversación que les va a ayudar a conectar.
And one last thing, if we have to learn from our children about technology, that's okay. If we talk to them about how the technology works, but we share our concerns for safety, that can bridge the communication gap right there. So don't be afraid to learn from wherever the education comes from.
Y muchas veces no tenemos que tener miedo, tal vez nosotros podamos entender la tecnología con la ayuda de ellos y eso nos puede ayudar también a conectar de una manera mejor.
Thank you so much, Scott. Liz, please, in an effort to turn all of this learning into knowledge for the soul, knowledge that will help us to go on, what advice might you offer to the community when it comes to the anxiety and depression that one might feel from being bullied? What can we do as parents? What can loved ones do if we witness in this anxiety and depression in others?
Sometimes it's hard to answer this kind of question because there are different things you would do with a very young teenager than with an older teenager or child.
Y ahora la pregunta para Elizabeth es que con todo el aprendizaje, transformándolo en conocimiento, ¿qué es lo que ella recomienda? A lo que Elizabeth responde que es muy complicado a veces con los niños que no están en la edad de adolescentes, sino que más pequeños de 12, 13, 14 años que están en esa etapa de cambio.
And my heart just breaks hearing about Debbie's story because there wasn't really any such thing as a parental control in 2008. There wasn't all the media attention about social media dangers or cyberbullying. It was really the cusp of, like I said, the rate of smartphones really just started 2013. But I would say for a tween, so that's a middle school child, you have to carefully monitor their exposure to anything online and the phone. And remember, these technologies, kind of what you said, Sean, are a privilege that we give to our children. And because we give it to them, if they err on it, and I like that you brought up that you have to look at our own children for possibly being bullies as well, that we can also discipline and take the technology away. If they're immature, they can't handle it, or something happens.
Ella lo que dice que se siente triste al escuchar la historia de Debbie y que en este caso también ella trae algo que Scott dijo, que tenemos que decirles a nuestros niños que la tecnología es un privilegio, la tecnología es una opción, ellos no están requeridos a obtenerla o a tenerla si es que así lo prefieren.
So in terms of the anxiety and depression and how it's connected to bullying, the way I have 4 grown children, and I feel very lucky that none of them, they're all so much older, they didn't go through, they had websites, but really they didn't have the social media. But I'll share with you a conversation that I teach the parents in my office today. You want to talk to your teenager with as much of a blasé tone as possible. Don't freak out if they tell you something that's alarming, because it's very key with teenagers. They read our faces, and if they're telling us something that's bothering them and we react too strongly, they'll shut right up.
Ella dice que una de las cosas muy importantes es que si su niño viene a usted a contarle un tema que le está molestando, es muy importante la reacción que tenemos hacia ellos, como el tono de nuestra voz que sea suave o calmada, aunque sea algo que no se sienta cómodo con ese tema, pero también las expresiones de la cara, porque ellos son muy inteligentes al poder leer nuestras gestos y nuestras reacciones.
And around anxiety and depression, watch your child for any changes in behavior and take it very seriously if a child starts to avoid social situations or wants to avoid going to school. And that's happening a lot post-COVID. A lot of children having trouble regularly going to school. And we always want to take it very seriously if a child suddenly changes all their friends. Because like Debbie and her husband knew about the friend changes, sometimes teenagers don't even tell the parents that they're being bullied. So we want to see if the child suddenly changes friends and they're not hanging out with their friends.
También nos dice que pongamos mucha atención a la ansiedad y a la depresión que se puede dar por todo eso que los niños están pasando, los muchachos están pasando. Muchas de las veces tenemos que ver señales en nuestros propios niños. Tal vez él es la persona que está haciendo bullying, tal vez él está actuando de una manera diferente, tal vez o él es el que está siendo acosado, y si es que hay eventos sociales se rehúsa a ir, o ya sea que ya no quiere ir a la escuela. Son señales que nos están diciendo mucho.
And one more thing I want to say, that one of the things that parents don't do enough of anymore, and I think it's because we're all on the screen, it's very helpful to help your child feel more comfortable about being a teenager, because it's absolutely awful to be a teenager. It's just very stressful and their emotions are very intense. It's very helpful for parents to tell stories of when they were a teenager and things that they learned and difficulties they went through. You don't want to just tell your child what a great football player you were. They don't care. First of all, they don't care. But if you tell them stories of, oh, I remember when my best friend stole my boyfriend in 9th grade and how I just felt horrible. And I didn't even have social media. I didn't have to be reminded about it on social media. So telling stories is actually the way human beings learn best. So as parents, if we think about it, and I'm a big believer that it's okay to embellish our stories just a little bit to fit the lesson.
Lo que nos dice Elizabeth es que tenemos que también estar alertas a las amistades o con quienes se relacionan nuestros niños. De igual manera, a conectar con nuestros niños, ya sea también nosotros abriéndonos a ellos, diciéndoles cómo fuimos cuando fuimos adolescentes, qué historias tuvimos. Ella trae un ejemplo, por ejemplo, mi novio o mi amiga me quitó al novio. Pueden exagerar, ella dice, pero es importante esa conexión que crean con sus niños.
Thank you so much, Liz. That was wisdom. That was wisdom. I want to thank the panelists for the collective wisdom and expertise here. This is first rate. I believe we have just a few minutes left, and we definitely want we want you to have a voice in this conversation. And so we want to take just a minute or two. If there's anyone in the audience, if you have a question for the panelists, we want you to lend your voice to this conversation. So please do not be shy. They would be happy to respond to you if anyone has a question at all.
Ahora abrimos para preguntas que tengan para nuestros panelistas relacionado al tema y para compartirlo.
Question or comment? What is the school's responsibility in cyberbullying? What is their response? What is to be expected in interacting with the school? There is some legislation that was passed in which Debbie had spoken to. Debbie, can you comment a little bit about that?
Well, I don't want to go into the whole thing, but it's just, I did have the opportunity to work on an updated bully bill that they were going to do in 2011, and we knew somebody who hooked us up with some legislators, and they were going to actually put cyberbullying into it and strengthen that bully law. And my husband and I were invited to look at the draft and provide some feedback, and then I was asked to testify on behalf of it. And I was told later that they thought there'd be a lot of wrangling, there was a lot of opposition to the bill, and it passed right away because they had an actual child that they could envision, and this was a little girl from Connecticut, and it passed right out.
La pregunta que nos hicieron fue ¿qué ¿Qué actos o qué está haciendo este Estado en relación al acoso o a la intimidación cibernética? A lo que Debbie responde que ella ha sido invitada y ha tratado con legisladores acerca del tema, por lo que han creado, están creando conciencia y ha pasado la amendment. Y esto ha pasado a los congresionistas y ha habido muchas oposiciones, pero debido a un caso que ocurrió aquí en Connecticut, esto pasó rápido, entonces está por ser aprobado.
Can I add something? As far as I understand the legislature, what it allows is if a cyberbullying or an online incident happens after school hours, but it filters into the day-to-day school and something is affected on our school day, the school may take action. And before this bill, there was nothing law enforcement could do. It was either a school issue or a home issue. This kind of bridged it for the schools to at least be able to take disciplinary action, keep their schools safe. Even if it started outside of school, if it filtered into school, it gave them some power that they can do some things to keep safe.
Scott quiere agregar a esto que dice, de acuerdo a los legisladores, esta regla que se ha impuesto dice que las escuelas públicas tienen que ser relacionadas y tomar acciones de disciplina si es que ellos encuentran que el acoso o la intimidación ha pasado en la escuela o ya sea haya sido después de la escuela, pero que la escuela o el personal o los niños estén involucrados.
Anyone else? Any questions whatsoever? If you're sitting there thinking it, someone else is probably thinking it as well. So please do express that we can't see. I'm sorry.
Can I ask a question? So you talk about the kind of traits of things to look for, obviously. Is there anything different to look for if one is doing the bullying versus one being bullied?
That's a good question.
So I don't want to go into this too much, but it's interesting. Often kids who have been bullied, who haven't gotten help with it, will bully themselves. And there's a lot of research on, there's a very small percentage of kids who bully who truly have, deep psychological problems and are cruel. Cruelty is one of well, human beings can be cruel even without psychiatric problems. I think we've all learned that in the last few years, or without diagnosed problems. But there's a small group of young people who could be showing extreme risk factors that they're being abused or they were terribly bullied, and then they turn around and also bully other kids. And there's good evidence that kids who are being treated with emotional or physical abuse at home often are at risk to be bullies. But not all of them have that profile.
La pregunta fue, ¿cuál es la diferencia o cómo identificar a un acosador de una persona que está siendo acusada? A lo que Elizabeth respondió que una persona puede tomarse o cambiar y ser una persona que está acosando a otros cuando sufre, ya sea en casa, de abuso, ya sea psicológico, ya sea violencia, y puede cambiar y ser una persona que esté haciendo acoso. Mientras eso no siempre pasa, pero no siempre pasa con todas las personas. De igual, a la persona que está siendo acosada, hay veces que es la persona mismo que se intimida y se siente menos que otras y permite que esto pase.
I just want to add one more thing. As the parent of an almost mean girl bully, my daughter's 36 and she actually works in the world of the internet. And she often says with her personality, she was pretty feisty and always getting into fights with friends. And she would have been probably a bully online if they had had social media. She was right at the cusp. So kids who also are feisty and have a hot temper, they can occasionally bully, but it's not like their persona. But that's where the parenting comes in. I had my daughter, that daughter write so many apology notes, I can't believe, and face to face. Because kids who are a little feisty like that, they have to be taught and they have to feel uncomfortable about their behavior, not in a cruel way, but we're kind of in a society now where anything goes, but the way people learn to be good people is sometimes you have to squirm, you have to feel a little bad about what you did. At least that's what I did with my daughter. But we're seeing, unfortunately, with parents, a trend in the last probably 20 years of parents excusing bad behavior. Oh, they're hungry, they're tired, whatever. You think they're talking about a toddler, they're talking about a 15-year-old bully. It's very important that parents squash that in their child and make their child accountable for that kind of behavior.
Lower back here. Okay, I'm just gonna translate really quick. Lo que Elizabeth nos dice también que hay veces que ella como experiencia propia tiene una niña con el temperamento alto y que muchas veces ella le ha hecho hacer muchas cartas de disculpas con otras personas y ella dice que en el caso de ella que si la tecnología hubiera avanzado cuando su niña era pequeña, posiblemente ella se hubiera sido una persona que intimidaba a otras, pero en este caso ella supo cómo manejarlo, supo cómo guiarle para que tome medidas y se disculpe por sus acciones. Y eso es lo que dice. Lamentablemente ahora en día los padres muchas veces justificamos los actos de nuestros niños, ya sea porque está con sueño o esto le está ocurriendo y muchas veces no vemos consecuencias a futuro.
Let us take one more question, please. I see the gentleman here in front.
I have a question over there too.
Was there another?
Yeah, I have a question for Elizabeth and Scott. I'm not familiar with legislation, but would something like a mandatory therapist in school to check in with students on a weekly basis, would that be possible in legislation?
Okay, the question is whether or not we could have a mandatory therapist in the schools?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, what I always like to do is talk about successful programs that are similar, and I think it's a great idea. In Massachusetts right now, there are child psychiatrists, psychologists, and social workers that are actually that are in the school, paid for by the state for just such a reason. Now, I don't think they're able to make it mandatory for every child, but if a child, for example, is involved in a bullying scenario, they're referred to one of these therapists. Unfortunately, in Connecticut, the trend over the past 15, 20 years, depending on which team is in charge of the school board, sometimes the first thing to be cut from the school budget, besides the arts, are mental health support, but I think we're all coming together as a society now to make sure that there's more of those programs. To answer your question, Connecticut doesn't have such a program. There's generally a school psychologist, a couple of school social workers, and then guidance counselors. But I would love it if we could model the Massachusetts program. They're having pretty wonderful success with that program, or at least they were before COVID. I haven't read the data since COVID.
Thank you so much. We will have to end the question and answer session. I'm so very sorry. I'm going to bring Councilman Duane back up to the stage. Again, we want to emphasize that if you feel at all that there is someone that you need to speak with, 988. You may text or call if you feel that you are in crisis. I'm going to bring back Councilman Duane Perkins. Thank you all so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pamela. That was wonderful, wasn't it? Distinguished panelists and our wonderful translator, or interpreter.
Can I have a minute? I have to translate what Elizabeth said. So, la pregunta que hicieron, la última pregunta fue si es que hay algo los legisladores han hecho para ayudar en las escuelas públicas con terapias o terapeutas, consejeros o trabajadores sociales que ayuden o que los adolescentes o niños puedan acudir. A lo que Elizabeth respondió que ya está consciente de que en Massachusetts ellos tienen un sistema muy bueno donde ellos tienen a su terapeuta, también su consejera o sus personas donde ellos pueden asistir cuando lo necesiten. Y ella esos datos lo chequeó antes de la pandemia. Sin embargo, aquí en Connecticut lamentablemente no lo tenemos por ahora, no es mandatorio, pero sí cuentan con una trabajadora social y a veces con una terapeuta, pero no en todas las escuelas, ya que cuando se cortan ingresos de las escuelas, los primeros en cortar son, aparte de las artes liberarias, son unas de esas los psicólogos y las personas que no son tan requeridas.
For me personally, it's humbling to see the inaugural event come together with great conversations and great learning.
Para Juan es muy motivador de haber venido y haber compartido todas estas experiencias.
Before we wrap things up, again, I'd like to thank our sponsors, and again, please support these businesses. They're good for the community, do a lot for many organizations. We value your feedback. There is information available for a very short survey to help us with this evening's event.
Otra vez agradecemos a nuestros patrocinadores y ahora queremos saber un poquito de esto. Vamos a hacerles una encuesta para que ustedes nos digan cómo estuvo el evento.
And more importantly, we would like to hear your suggestions for our future events.
Y también estamos aceptando sugerencias para eventos próximos.
If you have access to a cell phone, that QR code may work. There's a QR code on the back of your agenda, and there's also a tiny URL that you can go directly online.
Ustedes pueden usar su teléfono para usar ese código QR y hacer la encuesta. También tienen ese código detrás de su ticket que ustedes recibieron. De igual manera, abajo está un enlace donde ustedes pueden acceder a la página.
May I mention a resource that I forgot to mention? In the middle schools in Danbury and also Danbury High School, there's a school-based health center that has social workers and therapy available for any children that seek it. I forgot to say that.
Ella quiere mencionar algo rápido de un programa que tienen aquí en las escuelas, para las escuelas públicas y la escuela elementaria y intermedia, que ellos cuentan con psicólogos, terapeutas.
It's called School-Based Health Clinic.
Se llama School Based Clinic, donde pueden acudir.
Also, I would like to thank some of our sponsors for showing up. They were outside in the hallway, Connecticut Institute for Families and Children and the City of Danbury Health and Human Services.
También queremos agradecer a nuestros patrocinadores. Uno de ellos está afuera, que sería el Connecticut Institute for Communities y, sorry, the other one.
Where you work, and the City of Danbury Health and Human Services.
Y la ciudad de Danbury de Health y
Human Services.
Human Services.
So let's hear another round for our moderator, our panelists, our interpreter. One last time. I'd be remiss if I didn't thank my volunteers. Give a hand to the volunteers. This brings our inaugural Danbury Talks to a close. Feel free to visit the tables outside as you leave the theater. Thank you all for coming, and we'll see you again.
Esto ha sido todo. Gracias por asistir y tómense su tiempo para tomar refrigerios que están afuera. Gracias.
Well, Larry, thank you for the comments. Thank you very much, everybody.